Welcome back, America. That is Chamath Palihapitiya, a billionaire tech investor in Silicon Valley. He is minority owner of the Golden State Warriors. I'm joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton, who serves on the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and the Judiciary Committee, all of which would be interested in the genocide underway in China. Good morning, Senator Cotton. Good to have you.
Good morning, Hugh. It's good to be on with you.
What do you make of Mr. Palihapitiya, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, comments?
Well, they show a shocking indifference, Hugh, to the depravity of the Chinese communist regime and the plight of the religious and ethnic minorities known as the Uyghur people in northwestern China, who the entire civilized world, to include the Biden administration, has acknowledged are suffering at the hands of an atrocious genocide where women are being forcibly sterilized. And if they're not being forcibly sterilized, they're being viciously raped by Chinese Han soldiers in a kind of intergenerational ethnic cleansing. It's not surprising, though, coming from one of these typical liberal tech billionaires who saddle up their high horse and ride it so hard when it comes to things like climate change and green energy and equity and the Black Lives Matter riots, when at the bottom line, all that matters to them is the bottom line. And they think they can get rich off of those things. And they can with these Democrats in charge and all the tax breaks and subsidies being handed out. But they know that if they cross the Chinese Communist Party, it may threaten their access to the Chinese market or to cheap Chinese inputs. So I have to say what this guy spoke over the weekend is a classic Washington gaffe. He didn't say something that was not what was in his heart. He said exactly what was in his heart and what's in the heart of so many of these liberal tech billionaires and their courtiers in Washington.
Now, Senator, I want to play for you two longer clips because it's not just that line, below my line. Here is the longer clip of his conversation with Jason Calacanis, cut number 13.
Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs, okay? You bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard...
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth, okay? Of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay? Of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Disappointing.
Well, I think people, if you explain to them what's happening to the Uyghurs in China, they care, but it's not top of mind for them.
That's not
what's
caring.
Top of mind right now is they go to their grocery store and the shelves are empty.
Sure, that I care about. Yeah. I care about the fact that our economy could turn on a dime if China invades Taiwan. I care about that. I care about climate change. I care about I care about America's crippling and, decrepit healthcare infrastructure. But if you're asking me, do I care about a segment of a class of people in another country? Not until we can take care of ourselves will I prioritize them over us. And I think a lot of people believe that. And I'm sorry if that's a hard truth to hear. But every time I say that I care about the Uyghurs, I'm really just lying if I don't really care. And so I'd rather not lie to you and tell you the truth. It's not a priority for me.
And my response to that is I think it's a sad state of affairs when human rights as a concept globally, falls beneath, tactical and strategic issues that we have to have. We need to have a high watermark.
That's another luxury belief.
I don't believing in the human Declaration of Human Rights that Eleanor Roosevelt created with the United Nations. I don't think it's a luxury belief to believe that all humans should have a basic set of human rights.
I think it's a luxury belief.
Right.
And the reason I think it's a luxury belief is we don't do enough domestically to actually express that view in real tangible ways. So until we actually clean up our own house, the idea that we step outside of our borders with us sort of like morally virtue signaling about somebody else's human rights track record.
So, Senator Cotton, it's worse than it sounded, isn't it?
Yeah, Hugh, I think it's important for people to hear the extended cuts because it's clear that he believes strongly that it shouldn't matter to us that China is committing genocide against its own people. And that's just one of the crimes that China commits against its own people. Thinks what it's done to Hong Kong. Thinks what it does to suppress Christian belief throughout China. Or
Tibet.
Harvest organs. What it's done in Tibet. What he cares about is making a buck in China. That's what he cares about. That's why we've had so many of these globalist CEOs, many of them from tech companies, smothering Capitol Hill for the last year, lobbying against the slave labor bill that passed with overwhelming majorities late last year after the Democrats finally relented, because they want to get cheap products and inputs for their companies from Northwest China, even if it's being produced by Chinese slaves. In those clips, he reveals their liberal mindset. Again, he got up on his high horse about climate change because he can make a buck about climate change. But he's willing to be totally silent about genocide in China because he wants to make a buck in China as well. Just like you, the Golden State Warriors' pathetic response to his statements. They issued a statement yesterday saying that they disagree with his opinion without even saying what the opinion is. But who knows what opinion they're talking about? Maybe this guy likes chocolate instead of vanilla, and the Golden State Warriors want to disagree with that opinion. The Golden State Warriors, like the rest of the NBA, tremble in front of the Chinese Communist Party. Even when they're expressing disagreement and trying to get distance from one of their owners, they won't even express the opinion they're trying to get distance from because they're so greedy about access to the Chinese market.
Let me add,
Silver, and the NBA should stand up today and denounce the Chinese Communist regime for its crimes against the civilized world. But don't hold your breath, Hugh.
I hope you bring him in to talk to him about this, because this is obviously a deep NBA problem. Chamath Palihapitiya issued a tweet 13 hours ago. Important issues deserve balanced discussion, some clarifying comments. His clarifying comments include, in re-listening to this week's podcast, I recognize that I came across as lacking empathy. I acknowledge that entirely. As a refugee, my family fled a country with its own set of human rights issues, so this is something that is very much a part of my lived experience. To be clear, my belief is that human rights matter, whether in China, the United States, or elsewhere, full stop. I have to play for you one more clip, Senator, because I don't think any people have heard it. This is cut number 2.
I think I'm spending a lot of time and money actually trying to fortify America's supply chain. You guys know about some of the things that I'm doing. I'm not doing that from a moral perspective. I'm doing that from a practical capitalist perspective. I think the jobs are better served for Americans. And I think that we should have the ability to build our own businesses, just like China has the right to do for themselves, without the risk of these things being undercut by policies that we don't understand, which is effectively what you do when you outsource your supply chain to countries where you're not 100% aligned with them.
Yeah, and they're dictatorships.
So I'm not even sure that China is a dictatorship the way that you want to call it that. Again, I think
communist country that's in the name.
Look, you have to understand, Jason, there are a set of checks and balances here on China that, at the end of the day, I don't think that I have the moral absolutism to judge China. And I would say that when NATO is silent, the United Nations is silent, all of Western Europe is silent, and America is effectively silent, that this issue may be small data points being extrapolated in a way to create a narrative that maybe not be true. And if it is true, Jason, there's a responsibility for those body politics to do something, because that is the early warning signal that the rest of the world uses to say, okay, hold on, let me reprioritize my list of things. So I guess what I'm saying is I am not going to be an armchair journalist on this topic, nor am I going to be the armchair human rights advocate for the world, because I just don't know. I can focus on the things that I know about, build the things that I know about. And if something really does get red light status, then other parties will do something. And again, I just want to be clear. NATO is silent. United Nations is silent. America is silent. A press release doesn't change the actual technical posture on these topics.
Okay.
Senator, that is not only craven, it's ignorant. Your response?
Deeply craven and deeply ignorant. And again, the extent of the remarks belies his weak effort to clean it up. It's not just a one-off line in a broader interview on a topic about which he's not informed. He's clearly very informed about the topic and has very well-defined views. He is a communist toady who will do anything to make a buck. There were people like this guy in the Cold War when it came to Soviet communism. The difference was our economy was not entangled with Russia during the Cold War the way it is today. So now you combine the worst aspects of fellow traveling with communists and capitalist greed, and you get what you have with this guy. I mean, I think the NBA has to come out today and explain whether they're going to take any action. Hugh, remember a few years back, they forced Donald Sterling to sell the Clippers.
Yes.
And he was the majority owner because of his racially prejudiced remarks. Is the NBA going to let this guy continue to be a minority owner of the Golden State Warriors? I mean, this is clearly a well-developed viewpoint. He does not care about a communist regime committing a heinous genocide against its own people. And again, we're just talking about one specific aspect of their crimes against the civilized world. Add to that Tibet and Taiwan and Hong Kong and oppression of Christians and organ harvesting. The NBA has been tanking for the last few years, in part because they've let their politics overtake their basketball games. This is not the NBA at its peak of the Jordan, Magic, Bird years. The NBA, the ratings for the finals last year, for example, were awful. And it's in part because they probably turned off viewers with their craven sucking up to the Chinese Communist Party.
And I think this fellow got to listen in on the big boys, the majority owners, and he heard them say, we're not going to talk about China, and he misunderstood that to say, deny what's going on in China.
Yeah, there's a good chance of that, Hugh, because, again, look at Golden State's statement. They didn't say, we disagree, there is a genocide in China happening. They didn't even say, we disagree with his comments about the genocide against the Uyghur people. They said, we disagree with his opinion. Again, leaving you to guess what the opinion is.
That's right, because he had many opinions, all of them stupid, but he had many opinions. Senator, you did such a good job on the floor mimicking Chuck Schumer. I hope you give a floor speech about this fellow, because only attention withers ignorance, and this fellow needs withering. And he needs educating, and he needs to apologize. He needs to divest of his warriors. And he just he's trying to draw attention to the fact he did a SPAC with something called Pro Kidney. And they're having fun with him on Twitter, wondering where he's getting his kidneys from. That is a very macabre reference to the organ harvesting underway in China.
Yeah, well, I don't think any kind of new business deals he's going to announce is going to turn away from the infamous comments he made on this podcast over the weekend, Hugh.
I agree. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you for joining me. Don't go anywhere, America.